Hello, world. In this episode of Radically Transparent, I'm joined by one of the most influential marketing leaders with more than 30 years of experience across sectors that include MarTech and FinTech. He has an excellent track record of building and operating high-performing go-to-market functions, and his standing among his peers in the marketing community is exceptional, as shown by the number of awards he's received throughout his career. Please join me in welcoming Colin Day, Oktopost Managing Director of EMEA and APAC, back to the show. Colin, welcome back. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me today?
Let's get transparent, Jen. And by the way, it's like I didn't know I'd done half of that myself. So thanks for putting it out there. Did you want to write a book for me?
You know what? Consider it done. You can expect.
Do we have to do? Do you have to talk about the 30 years as well? Because it's like that makes me feel very old, right? Especially since my kids are now coming into the workplace as well, right? It's like that certainly is a humbling and should we say life-changing experience.
There you go. Are any of them with you today?
No, we've had one on a couple of weeks' work experience. So my youngest has been putting in a shift for Oktopost, but no, he's not in the office today. We've given him the day off.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have to do a radically transparent kids version.
Kids always tell the truth as well, Jen. So out of the mouths of the young.
There you go. So listen, I brought you on the show today. And thank you so much for joining, because I want to dive into a topic that I think is underspoken about when it comes to social media and the way we're going to speak about it today. And the topic for today is social governance. And I'm going to throw the question your way to kick us off. But,
sure.
Right. You've been with Oktopost a while. You've been in the marketing space for a while, the social space for a while. What is social governance, and why should it be on every marketer's agenda to discuss at some point?
Yeah, I'm glad you said on every marketer's agenda, right? Because do they own it? No, probably not, right? It's like, who owns policies and procedures around an organization, right? Or who has input and direction into it? Maybe HR, maybe legal, maybe compliance, maybe the business unit themselves, right? It's like, I certainly wouldn't say that social governance is necessarily owned per se by the marketing team, but they certainly are a big consumer or big net receiver of whatever that governance may bring, right? And if we get into what is governance, right? Governance can be a whole heap of things, right? There's a lot that goes into that basket. But in my mind, it starts off with, first of all, it always has to start off with a strategy, right? It's like, Jen, you and I often talk about, right, when we're talking about any form of transformation, right? We talk about the skill set, we talk about the mindset, and the mindset comes before the skill set, right? But and then we talk about the tool set, right? How do we go about executing those things? If we think about the social and the digital transformation journey that most marketing organizations have been on over the course of the last 12, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, or that could be months, or could even be weeks or days, right? But dependent upon where you are in that journey, everything starts off with what's the strategy, right? Strategy comes before everything, right? And as we think about social governance or the governance for a social program, a social media program, right, that has to come like as part of that strategy, right? It needs to be one of the very early things that we think about as we're going through a social transformation. And what is that governance? It as I say, it takes many different forms. It can start off with what's our social media policies, right? What's our communication policy? In some organizations I've worked in the past, employees weren't allowed to connect to their LinkedIn profiles right, during office hours, during the four walls of the office, right? And if you're a marketer and you're trying to, set up an employee advocacy program where you're trying to get the connected workforce to take some of your message and amplify it out over their personal networks to get the depth and breadth of that reach. If someone can't use one of the tools that you need them to use, right? It's like because you've got it locked down, that creates a problem, right? And therefore there needs to be an element of governance around it, right? And that's where tools such as Oktopost can come in and help. But so as we think about going back to your original questions, like around governance, takes many different forms, has to start right at the front of the digital transformation journey. Isn't owned per se by marketing specifically. Starts off really with what's the policy and the guidelines, the rails around the use of social media in the organization, but then takes many different forms once you're off and running, right? It's like because it may be that you're a regulated organization, or maybe it's like you're publicly listed. And maybe there's certain things you can and can't say, and certain times that you can and can't say stuff on social, and therefore you need the guide rails and the governance around that as well. So it's really all encompassing, Jen.
Yeah, so you bring me nicely to my next question, right? Because after defining social governance, and we know, right, under social governance usually lives crisis management of some sort, and there's all sorts of struggles and things that marketers need to be prepared for. What would you say are some of the biggest struggles brands today are facing when it comes to social governance or crisis management, or is there even a difference between the two?
Yeah, so define a crisis. I'm going to flip a question back at you now, Jen. It's like, what's a crisis?
Well, I come from the counterterrorism world. So for me, a crisis, knowing, perhaps that an asset has leaked some information or perhaps turned on us, right? That to me would be a crisis. When it comes to social media, right, that can be defined very differently. But I think, right, for many of us, I don't know, right? Different roles may have a crisis. I know, I joke with Olivia, our social media manager daily. One of our crises is if there's a typo, right? Seems so small, but you would be amazed at like such a small typo, the uproar that could cause, and then that could go all the way down, right, to a crisis being perhaps, I know there was a very famous crisis a few years back when a marketing automation technology went down, and their CEO was, on Twitter, tweeting about the brand because social wasn't necessarily connected to the technology and it wasn't in sync. So that could be, right, a PR crisis of some degree.
And that was all related to a credit card, but let's not go there. So Jen, in that regards, right? It's like you use crisis as a negative,
yeah,
right? It's like because hey, the word crisis means everything's just hit the fan, right? It's like but guess what? It's like you need to have a management plan in place, right? It's like when it may not be a crisis, but you may need to stop or pause or just rethink, right? It's like what it is you're actually putting out on social as a brand, right? So good example from as I say, it's like I used the example earlier on of maybe the brand is a publicly traded company.
mm-hmm.
Right, so maybe I'm in filing season, right? It's like over in the US, right? And I'm not allowed to go out like publicly and put out any material that could materially influence the direction of the share price, right? Now, is that a crisis? No, that's business as usual, right? It's like but I still need a way to be able to pull up that handbrake, right? Push the pause button, and stop the brand, or only empower certain people within inside the organization to post out on social, right? So being able to manage a crisis, I think first of all we have to define what a crisis is, Yeah, and I think it really comes down to more what is the communication plan and how do I manage that communication plan. Sure, bad things do happen, right? It's like bad things do happen. They're not all terrorist activities, like like you were giving. But I'm glad you brought that to the show, Jen. It's like but it's like bad things do happen, or accidents happen, and accidents have an impact on the way that we're perceived in the marketplace, and then maybe it's like we do need to instigate that crisis management. Or put that crisis management plan into action. It really comes down to understanding what the communication plan is, understanding what to do in good times, good events, good crises. I don't know what the word for a good crisis is, right?
I've got to hand it to you, Colin, because you're not wrong in that, right? Because I'm just, as you define crises, and we're saying, okay, negative crises or positive crises that exist. I've got to hand it to you because if we think back in the last few years alone, right, there have been moments, and I think no social media manager would have been prepared for anything that was 2020 or 2021, 2022, right? Like every single day on social media in real world, right? Not just business related, but real world social media, which is where your brand does live when it comes to social. There are moments in history that perhaps need space and time on social. So, the Black Lives Matter movement, the pandemic, right? Those were moments where I know a lot of social media teams, a lot of brands in general needed to reshift their messaging. So I'm just thinking to myself, that wasn't necessary. Yes, the pandemic was a negative thing. And right. But it wasn't necessarily a crisis in terms of the brand did something wrong. But if you were a social media manager and a team who, planned months in advance back in December, and then the pandemic hit, right? You might need to rethink that. And it's not necessarily a crisis as much as a rethinking or time to, re-strategize. Going back to your point, right? It's all about.
Don't get me wrong, Jen. In the marketer's mind, right? It's like when they walk in and that happens, right? Like March the 14th or whatever it is happens. That's a crisis, right? It's like, the sky is falling. What am I going to do? Right? It's panic, right? It is a crisis, right? But a crisis doesn't necessarily need to be a negative thing, right? It's like when we need to rethink as marketers, right, or as sales professionals, or just as the brand itself, right, as we need to rethink what our communication strategy is, right, or what our campaign strategy is, and social, this day and age is a key part of an integrated campaign strategy, right? So really it starts with what are we trying to achieve from the campaign, and then you've got the marketing programs and tactics underneath it, and socials, part of those marketing tactics. We need to adjust, right? It's like those tactics based upon what's happening in the campaign and what's happening in the wider ecosystem that affects that campaign.
Absolutely. So listen, shameless plug, right? Our loyal listeners know both of us come from the Oktopost world, and I'm just curious, Colin, right?
Oh, is that how you say it? I thought it was okay to post with Oktopost.
There you go. Okay.
Oh, thanks for setting that up. Thanks for setting that up for me, Jen. It's like
I was waiting for it, dad joke. So listen, can Oktopost help with this? Is this something that Oktopost has the ability to manage?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in several different ways, right? It's like I know there are various assets up on the oktopost.com website, right, under the blog section, that talk about purchasing social media management or social engagement platforms. And I believe at the end of one of those blog posts, Jen, maybe you want to post a link to it, like or put a call out to the link to it. But I know in there, right, it's like we've got a template around a social media policy, right? So it all starts with with that in mind. So if you don't have a social media policies, like you certainly need to go and get one, and there's a template that we've created to help. When it comes to the actual the actual deployment, right, and the actual management of what the governance should look like, right, several things, right. First of all, workflows, right, with inside the Oktopost platform. It's like maybe an organization needs to get legal review because maybe they're in a regulated industry, or maybe that's just their own. It's like process. Maybe someone from legal or compliance needs to review any corporate messages, or someone senior needs to review any corporate messages before they go out. The Oktopost platform has workflow capabilities there to support that, right?
Okay.
If we went to the example of the extreme of an organization doesn't allow employees to connect to social networks from within inside their the four walls of their organization because maybe they're fearful of data leakage, maybe they're fearful of people spending like time on platforms that take them away from their day job. The Oktopost platform can help manage that as well, right? In so much as Oktopost makes the connection to the social network, right? It's not the individual, right? So that helps enforce a governance structure there, right? So you can still, as a marketer, right, you can still put these solutions in. You can still empower the workforce, but you're still remaining like compliant with the organization's IT policies and procedures.
Important.
And then when it comes down to that handbrake or that big red button, because you've got a crisis, right, which may be positive or negative, as we've just explained, right? It's like with inside the Oktopost platform, there is something called crisis mode, or crisis management, that allows you to push that button, pull that handbrake, allows you to define, who should continue to have access to social, because you may still want some people to be able to manage the drip out or the feed out of information on social. And it also empowers you to notify employees on what's happening, how long it's going to be. We're going to be in that mode or in that state for, and it also empowers you to not only pause the content that you may have diarized to go out on the social channels. It allows you to delete it, right, if you so wish, right? So you can eradicate everything that you've got scheduled. Does that help, Jen?
It definitely helps. And my mind naturally went back to actually something you brought up earlier in the episode, right, about social media policy. And I want to address it because time and time again, what I'm seeing is, especially when it comes to employee advocacy, I think brands, for the most part, when it comes to corporate social, marketers know or should know, right, what they can say, the tone of the brand, what shouldn't be said. And there is some gray when we start getting into employee advocacy and we want to be able to give our colleagues and advocates the power to use their own voice, to tell their own stories about where they work at the right time, in the right place, on the right network. However, right, kind of thinking back to social governance and social media policies, a lot of organizations are starting to think through, how do we build a social media policy for advocacy without scaring the advocates, right? Because the word policy in general, right? If you say to someone, this is our policy, come in, your first day of work and you're just signing all these policies and you're like, am I signing my life away? Like, am I giving up my freedoms? What is this?
Or your firstborn.
Right. Or your firstborn, right? But when it comes to employee advocacy, what I've seen is actually implementing a friendly, I'll call it, employee advocacy policy, and sharing that with your advocates. I've actually seen that have a powerful impact in increasing engagement, because, if you think through the evolution of social, for so long, because brands were like, nope, you can't access social in the workplace, or be careful what you say because you could get fired, right? Which is still true. Right?
What goes online stays online, right?
But to some degree, the world has shifted. Organizations have understood that this type of censorship is not going to work for the organization. So what's your view on the type of social media policy, if any, that should be shared or given to advocates?
Yeah, so I'm going to flip that question a little bit, Jen, and I'm going to answer the one that I want to answer, right? It's like, but if I think about it, right, it's like, look, from a yes, there needs to be policies and procedures, right? It's like, that's the foundation, right? It's like, advocacy really gives the employee a bit of a safe space, right? Why do people not share stuff on social? Because they don't know what to say, right? And because they're in fear, right, as you said, of running foul of of that governance, of that policy, of that procedure, and putting their job at risk. Because really, what does go online does stay online, right? And sometimes as an employee, I don't know how to phrase things. I don't know what to say, right? It's like, yeah, sure, someone could have, given me a message on Slack, or other communication channels do exist, right? But some marketer may have said to me, it's like, hey, go share this, please, right? There's no way I'm going to share it, because it's not how I would write something, right? And it doesn't look like it's coming from Colin.
Well, let's put it
Yeah,
out there,
maybe
right? Let's put it out
maybe you
there.
maybe you wrote it, and it's got some Z's in some funny
You
places,
mean
Jen, or
Z's?
yeah, or it's got exclamation marks after every single sentence, or lots of emojis. That's not the way that that I would speak, and anyone that knows me would look at that and it's like laugh. Maybe I have spelling mistakes as well, but I don't pick up on. But let's not go there. But so it needs to be in my voice, right? It needs to be in my tone of voice. It needs to be harmonized and humanized to me. Right. So, I need a safe space to be able to do that. And that's what an advocacy program helps with, right? Because the marketer, creates a suggested, let's put it that way, a suggested content. Sure, it can be locked down, but let's say it's open for edit. I can then take it, it's like, wordsmith it to my tone of voice, and put it out to my network. So it allows it to, be more authentic from Colin,
Yeah.
but it gives me that safe working space. So I think it starts off with policy, right? It then comes to education, right? And it's about educating the employees on what they should and shouldn't say, how they should set up their social profile in the first place, right, Jen? It's like, the number of times that you and I will go out to a client, right, and we'll run workshops with teams on social selling, right, and the first thing we'll talk to them about is, show us your LinkedIn account, right? It's like, let's look at your LinkedIn profile. It's like, how do you put your own storefront up on, you personally, your personal storefront up on LinkedIn? It's like, have you got a professional photo up there? Sure, it doesn't have to be, doesn't have to come from from David Bailey, or some professional photographer, right? But it's a case of look at the photo that you've got up on LinkedIn as an example, and say, would you do business with someone that looked like this? Right. And maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no, right? If the answer is no, then guess what? Maybe you want to consider going to change your photo, if you've got one up there in the first place. So many people don't even have photos, Jen.
Yeah.
Right. So it's education, right? It's about having the framework, right? The policy and procedure framework. It's then about educating the employees on how to present themselves on social and how to communicate on social. And then it's about empowerment, right? And that empowerment comes from giving them the content and cutting them loose. And then the last thing is, sure, do you know what? It's like, you've got to monitor what's going on, right? And in some industries, you need an audit trail as well, right? It's like, if you look at the financial services industry, for example, in most jurisdictions, you've got to keep all communication, whether it be email, telephone, written, social, right? You've got to keep that around for a 7-year period, or longer, right? So you need to know, it's like, what's been posted, what the employees are saying, etc. And you need an ability to capture that and store that.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, for the sake of the show, right? Getting radically transparent together. Can you share a time when you actually had to use the big red button?
Jen, if I told you a time, I'd probably have to shoot you. But look, there has been times when we've had to use the big red button in former employers of mine. It's like I can't go into the specifics because I would probably get sued, or they would get sued by someone else. But yeah, there was a time when it had, should we say, big ramifications on the US financial networks.
All right. Well, we'll leave it to
And,
there.
and that's all I'm going to say on that one, Jen. Because hey, it's like I'm sure someone can go and Google things and have a look about net asset values, etc. But that's probably as far as I can go on that. But yeah, there have been instances, and guess what? I was using Oktopost at the time, Jen, so it was really easy to like say stop.
So what I'm hearing, right? It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, look, it's like good things and bad things happen, right? It's like and sometimes in both good and bad situations, as we've tried to cover across the course of this episode, right? It's like there are going to be times when you need to take a pause and you need to reflect, and you need to think about what the communication strategy really needs to be, and that's the time when as a marketer involved in social, or as a marketer in general, that is running any form of integrated campaign strategy, that's when you go into a crisis, because you go into a crisis in your head, because it's like, oh my God, my world is changing, and how do I pause things in order to get that space to reflect and strategize on what the next steps need to be.
Makes a lot of sense. So listen, I know you can't tell us when you had to press the big red button, but I'm going to poke the bear one more time, right? So we can't talk about what happened, but can you share post recovery? What was the biggest lesson you learned as a marketing leader, either in that situation or in terms of, social governance and kind of after a crisis or an incident? What was your biggest learning moment?
Yeah, look, everything turned out for the good, right? It's like the world carries on turning. It's not as if we're solving world peace or sorting out world hunger, right? It's like the world will keep on moving. It's like but that being said, it's like what was the biggest learning? I think you've already said it, Jen, right? The biggest learning is not if but when, right? And it's having a level of preparedness, right, for when that event happens. What steps am I going to take? What who am I going to pull into it? Who's going to become that the war room, right? It's like or where is the war room, and who am I pulling into it, right? Because it will happen, and it's just a case of be prepared, right? It's like understand, it's like what steps you need to take, and get ready, but enjoy the ride before it happens, right?
There you go. Colin Day, social governance from Oktopost. Thank you so much for joining the show. And also you're hosting soon, I understand.
I am, Jen. I am hosting soon. Have I got one or two guests? Am I kicking you out of the chair for one time or two times? I don't know, but
we'll have to wait and see. But what I can share with the audience is Colin is going to be taking over some podcasts. We've got some great shows lined up, so keep on listening. If you like what Colin had to say today, the seat's going to get even hotter as he brings in a few guests to speak on some real fun topics.
and Jen, do I get to say your famous tagline?
Hello,
world.
You can give it a try. You might need to dust that up a bit.
No one can pull it off as well as you, Jen. But thank you for vacating the seat, going on holiday for a while, and letting me loose with your microphone and your guests.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.